Привіт! I'm Chuck Olenek, a Ukrainian-American baptized with the name Yaroslav. It's also the name I use in the historical reenactment group, the Society for Creative Anachronism, where I'm known as Yaroslav the Persistent or Yari. For the past 2 years, I've been taking decades of Slavic research on mythology, folklore, history, culture, and I've been putting this stuff together and making videos and posting them on my YouTube channel, which, by the way, would be really cool if you subscribe to. And my purpose is to share this stuff. There's an ulterior motive as to why I've been doing all this Slavic research, besides the inevitable novel which everybody in the SCA is working on. Part of why I wanted to do this is I really wanted to develop my persona in greater detail. Well, then here I am in the Kingdom of Kaid. We have an event called the Arts and Sciences Pentathlon, which comes along every couple of years. And it was pointed out to me that, dude, you've been doing that forever. Why don't you do the persona entry? So I'm that annoying knight who annoys all the squires and annoys the members of my lineage and annoys people that show up to practice. Like, you got a persona yet? Need help? We can help you develop one. And some people aren't here, some people for that reason. Some people are here for the violence, and that's it. That's cool. But I decided, no, I need to walk the walk. So the best way for me to remember this stuff is if I do a video of it. By the way, I know that this is going to be way too long to be used as an entry. Besides, I'm going to be voicing over pictures like I usually do in my videos. But I wanted the historical context and the major events going on around my persona's lifetime. So think of this as the FM version for the radio buffs, or the director's cut. That'll give me an idea of what to cut out when I want to do the shortened AM version. So, I'm Yaroslav Mikhailovich, called the Persistent. I was born in the year 6542, as they reckon the years in Constantinople, but others would say 1034. It was the 15th year of the reign of Yaroslav Volodymyrovich. Yaroslav Mudry, you would say Yaroslav the Wise, the rightful ruler of Kiev, the Grand Prince. My family were what you would call izgoy, those whose status had changed. My father, Mikhail Pavlovich, having been an artisan who lost his business, so we lived on the church lands with others of our kind. Princes without territory, sons of priests who could not read or write, bankrupt merchants, slaves who had bought their freedom, those who did not fit anywhere and usually ended up living on church lands. On that very spot, our prince began the building of St. Sophia Cathedral to commemorate this victory. As I grew older, my father and I helped build more fortifications to protect Kiev. There was already Volodymyr City that was surrounded by ramparts 7 sashen high, 4 to 6 sashen thick, topped with whitewashed log walls, and 4 gates, some of them stone and brick. But we worked on what was called Yaroslav City, 7 times larger than Volodymyr City, and adjoining it on the south, the fortifications comprised of ramparts as tall as those of Volodymyr City, but at least thrice as thick, topped with log walls. And this stretched for over 3 versts. There were 4 stone or brick gates. It was during the building of the Zoloty Vorota, or the Golden Gate, the main gate, that my father was killed in an accident. Whenever I pass through that gate, I think about him. There was great need of these fortifications for my prince, for whom I am named, and his sons, fought many wars, and there were many times he dipped his helm in a river and drank from it to signify his victory. To defend his state from the attacks of the nomadic tribes, my Prince Yaroslav added to the Zmej Valley, the snake ramparts, which stretched 900 versts. 900 versts of ditches and earthen ramparts topped with wooden walls, at times 3 sashen tall and 4 times as thick, closely linked with the fortresses built along the rivers. I worked on these ramparts as I saw my mother and my sister fading after my father's death. It was here that I also saw the Black Cats for the first time, and I saw my future. As Yaroslav ruled most justly, he compiled a book of laws called Pravda Yaroslava, Yaroslav's Justice, so that all knew the fairness by which he ruled. He founded a primary school and a library at St. Sophia Cathedral, and sponsored the translation of Greek and other texts into Church Slavonic. He brought wisdom of other lands to his people. If you could read, I cannot. Over 400 churches he built in Kiev alone, which made it a rival to Constantinople itself. I will speak of how the church and the priests affect me later. But let us now speak of my prince's family, for their lives, as noble as they were intertwined with mine. My Prince Yaroslav had 4 daughters and 6 sons, the first of which was from his first marriage. He arranged marriages for his daughters to kings of Norway and France and Hungary. But there was the matter of his sons. Knowing the danger that could ensue from divisions between the brothers, he exhorted them to live in peace with one another. The eldest of these, Volodymyr of Novgorod, predeceased his father in 6560, 1052. 2 years before Yaroslav's death. When my Prince Yaroslav passed in 6562, at the ripe old age of 76, so did my mother and sister. Free of my obligations, I left the church lands where I'd lived as an izgoy, and I became a black hat. The Yaroslavichi, as the sons of Yaroslav were called, ruled a divided land, but there was brotherly cooperation. For nearly 20 years, the eldest, Izyaslav, succeeded Yaroslav as Grand Prince and ruler of the Kiev and Novgorod lands. Sviatoslav II would rule the Chernihiv land to Murom and to Mutkorkan. Vsevolod, the Pereyaslav and Rostov lands, Ihor, the Volodymyr Volinsky land, and Vyacheslav, the Smolensk land. In that same year, there was war against the Turks to the south, and threats from the Polovtsians, and so there was plenty of work for the Black Hats, who were given, in exchange for their services, fine armor and weapons from Constantinople, lands in the south to settle as our reward. We settled near the snake ramparts. This was a much better life for me. I wasn't building fortifications or living amongst the izgoy on church lands. I was like the druzhiniki who shared the prince's fire and served as his bodyguards. But it was we, the Black Hats, who were the walls, who kept the lands of Kiev safe from those marauders, from the sea of grass, from the steppes. And when we weren't at war, we tended our lands. In 65-68, 6 years after the death of Yaroslav the Wise, after collecting a numberless army, Izyaslav, Sviatoslav, and Vsevolod made an expedition by horse and by ship against the Turks. When the Turks heard of their coming, they were afraid and are fleeing even unto this day, save those who joined the Black Hats. By this time, the 2 youngest brothers had passed away, but the 3 remaining Yaroslavichi cooperated. Those were good years. I did not see a reason to choose between the brothers. Iziaslav was the eldest, therefore he was the Grand Prince and lived in royal Kiev town, and his younger brothers obeyed him as sons, as their father had bade them to do. As I said, I had land. I grew rye and raised pigs. My house, made of wattle and daub with a thatched roof, has 2 rooms, larger and smaller. The little room is where the peach, the large stove is, and pretty much the workroom. The larger room has special status. It is here on the east wall where the icons and the rushniki go. That's where the idols used to go before we became Christians. Right. I said I'm a Christian, but don't tell my priest any of this. He gets angry when we speak of such matters that do not come out of the Bible. And in truth, I do not go to church as often as I should because I make excuses. There are wars to be fought. My prince needs my sword. And as they say, the church is near, but the road is icy. The tavern is far. But I shall walk carefully. So about these matters, I do not tell my priest, who says I'm a vershok away from sin. In the oven, we call it a peach. There lives one we call the little fellow. The Domovic, but don't speak that name. We refer to him as the little fellow. If he's unhappy, the family is not safe. If you fail to leave out his favorite food on the table, things get broken. If you're going to talk about him, call him Did or Didko or grandfather. Whenever I go on a journey, I have to sit in the lane in silence because the little fellow doesn't like to be left alone. And this sometimes fools him. Don't tell my priest. There's a separate bathhouse where birch wood is burned in the stove to produce steam, and we have birch branches and leaves which we beat our bodies with to drive out the toxins. And in the banya lives the banik. I've been told the banik looks like a small, naked old man with a really long beard and his body covered in birch leaves. But I've never seen him. But I know he's there. He can tell the future, so do not get on his bad side. And you always, always leave him offerings of birch branches and water and soap with a formal thank you. Again, don't tell my priest. Just do as I say. There's the Ovinik. The Ovinik lives in a corner of the threshing house and looks kind of like a disheveled cat. You need to keep a fire going in the threshing barn as he goes about his duties, but do not let him build the fire or he'll burn the barn or set fire to the grain. And then there's the Vasily. He takes care of the horses. He is said to have hooves himself. I was told if you hear sleigh bells tinkle on a winter's night and dogs are barking in the dark, the Vasily is just taking the horse out for exercise in the snow. He's a good little fellow. But don't tell my priest. There's all sorts of spirits about, but the priest can't know. The Dvorovic, he's in the farmyard, and he's associated with the grounds of the farmyard and the cattle shed and the stable. The Dvorovic, he's similar to the little fellow that we don't name, but he's not as kind. He likes to protect the white hens, especially if you appease him with bread and with friendly talk. Sometimes you have to give him a bit of wool, maybe something shiny, and that seems to please him. but he has a darker side, and to punish him, you take a pitchfork and you stick it in a fence, or beat him with a whip that's got to include a thread from a winding sheet, or hang a dead magpie in the yard. That will get his attention. You'll need to know of such matters should you ever farm. I spoke of growing rye. You must give ear and learn wisdom, for there are two spirits who stalk the fields. There's the Poludnitsa. Some call her the Lady of the Rye. She lives in the fields, shows up on hot summer days. You might see a swirling dust cloud. That's her. But often she shows up as a young woman, dressed in white, long dark hair, and maybe she's got cornflowers in her hair. And she carries a sickle. And if she finds anyone still working at the extreme heat of the day, she stops them. Maybe she roughly pulls their hair. I know, this is why my hair looks like this. She might drive them mad. She might cut off their heads with a sickle, or just give you a really bad headache. So I always take a nap midday when I'm at work in the rye field. Then there's the Polovik. You rarely see him, but he looks sort of like a smerd, a peasant, normally dressed in white or black, but he's got different colored eyes and green hair. And if he finds you asleep in the field, it better not have been from drinking, because he enjoys strangling people who have passed out from too much drink, or he might lead them astray in the fields, or give them diseases, or shower them with dirt clods, or possibly have his pony kick the sleepers. I do not mess with those spirits. I miss the days of peace, even though they were haunted by spirits, which I cannot tell my priest about. Those peaceful days ended in 6576 when the Cumans invaded. The three brothers united their forces against them, but the Cumans routed them at the Alta River. After their defeat, Vsevolod withdrew to Pereslav. However, the citizens of Kiev rose up in open rebellion, dethroned Izyaslav, and liberated and proclaimed Vyacheslav Ryasheslavich of Polotsk, also known as Vyacheslav the Sorcerer or Vyacheslav the Seer, as their grand prince. The Vsevolod and Sviatoslav made no attempt to expel the usurper from Kiev. Vyacheslav had a foul reputation. The chronicles state he was conceived by sorcery. Izyaslav fled to Poland to his brother-in-law and cousin Boleslav II, the Bold, and with his aid retook Kiev a year later from Vyacheslav. With Iziaslav's return to Kiev, the triumvirate of the Yaroslavichi was restored. But the devil had stirred up strife amongst the three brothers. Vsevolod supported Sviatoslav against Izyaslav, and Izyaslav was forced to flee. The chronicler put the blame of this action on Sviatoslav, as do I, stating that he was the instigator of his brother's expulsion, for he desired power. The chronicler also stated that Sviatoslav had misled Vsevolod by asserting that Izyaslav was entering into an alliance with Vyacheslav against them. Why? This is how I was drawn into their war. Sviatoslav emerged as the Grand Prince of Kiev between 6581 and 6584, while Vsevolod took the throne of Chernihiv. While Izyaslav in vain sought help from the Emperor Henry IV of Germany and Pope Gregory VII, Sviatoslav increased the territory of Kievan Rus. Otherwise, his reign was short and uneventful. On December 27th of that year, Sviatoslav died from the cutting of a sword, and on January 1st, Vsevolod succeeded to his throne. But it was a short reign of mere months, for Izyaslav Yaroslavich marched on Kiev with Polish troops. Vsevolod Yaroslavich renounced his throne in favor of his elder brother and retired to Chernihiv. As a reward, the newly restored Izyaslav granted Sviatoslav's former principality to Vsevolod. But Sviatoslav's sons consider the principality of Chernihiv as their own Ochina, their patrimony. Oleg Sviatoslav made alliance with the Kumans and invaded Chernihiv. Izyaslav came to Vsevolod's rescue and forced Oleg to retreat, but Izyaslav, standing amongst the foot soldiers, was struck in the shoulder by a spear. Thus, Izyaslav, the son of Yaroslav, the rightful prince of Kiev, met his death. After the death of Prince Izyaslav, Vsevolod, as the last of the Yaroslavichi, as their father's only surviving son, took the throne of Kiev, thus uniting the three core principalities, Kiev, Chernihiv, and Pereslavl, in Kievan Rus. He appointed his eldest son, Vladimir Monomach, to administer Chernihiv. Vsevolod was not a great warrior prince. He tended to lose battles that he commanded, but his eldest son, Vladimir Monomach, there was a grand and famous warrior, and he did most of the fighting for his father, and there was plenty of that, and plenty of work for the Black Hats, because there was continued fighting amongst the Kievan Rus princes, but no real serious challenges to Vsevolod's own position. Vsevolod's last years were marked by grave illness, and his son Vladimir presided over the government. And Vsevolod died in 6601, and he was succeeded not by Vladimir, his eldest son, but by Sviatopolk Izyaslavich, or Sviatopolk II, his elder brother's son, and acknowledged by other princes as the senior son of the Grand Prince, and he ascended the throne of Kiev. He was not terribly popular. Sometimes I think he liked to encourage wars amongst the other princes. But for the most part, I've managed to live a good life, gone gray in the service of my princes.